Have you ever believed that a blurred, rain-soaked photograph could shatter an entire empire? A powerful millionaire who thought he had lost the love of his life suddenly discovered that a homeless child dancing in the rain bore the exact same eyes as the woman he had buried 10 years ago. And when the secret was unveiled, an illustrious dynasty was forced to tremble before the truth. The one they had despised was in fact their own flesh and blood. This is not just a story about a dance, but a journey of exposing lies, reclaiming family, and proving that love, no matter how long it has been buried, will always find a way. Rain poured down on San Francisco as though someone were drumming hurried fingers against glass, tiny droplets racing one another across the window of a Tesla, slowly pulling into the parking lot of St. Gabriel Children's Hospital. Daniel Whitmore, 47, who had spent half his life turning a software idea into an empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, once again realized a simple and cruel truth. Money meant nothing against the wheezing breaths of his 7-year-old daughter curled up in a wheelchair behind him. In that instant, he thought, if balance sheets could feel cold, perhaps they would stop gleaming green and instead shiver like Lily's small shoulders, and he might feel a little less useless. Lily sat silent, staring out at the rain, at the way each yellow hallway lamp reflected across the water-streaked pavement. Her eyes were pale jade gray, like the sea without sunlight. Her hands rested on the white wheelchair's arms, thumb rubbing against index finger in a habit that surfaced whenever she was anxious. 6 months since the accident meant 6 months of doctor's appointments, physiotherapy sessions, and solemn MRI scans stretched out like verdicts. They told him Lily had little chance of walking again. They used gentle but freezing terminology like ice wrapped in velvet. Daniel learned to nod, to sign bills, even to smile encouragement, though every time he pushed the wheelchair up a concrete ramp, his heart seemed to fall straight through his chest. "Daddy," Lily's voice was thin as a strand of rain. "Look." Daniel followed the small finger pointing outward, through the rain-blurred glass, past the hospital's automatic doors, to a small stone courtyard lined with drenched geraniums. There, in the downpour, a boy was dancing. At first sight, Daniel thought of some cheap commercial for happiness, but the boy's movements instantly shattered all preconceptions. It wasn't reckless flailing, nor the clumsy mimicking of street kids aping internet clips. It was disciplined lines, spins held firmly on axis, clean jumps with toes landing softly, knees bent just enough so his weight dropped, then sprang back like a coiled spring. Rain splashed against his slender frame, an oversized dark t-shirt clung to him, torn pants frayed at the knees, black hair plastered flat. Yet his arms carved arcs like paintbrush strokes, tiny forearm muscles rising as he rotated his wrists to sustain each motion, as if listening to a melody the world had forgotten. "See, I told you, Daddy hasn't—" Daniel turned and caught Lily's eyes wide open in a way he hadn't seen for half a year. Wide not from pain, but from curiosity, from longing, not fear. "He dances like the angel from my dream," Lily whispered, lips quivering with both cold and awe. There are moments when one understands what months of therapy cannot awaken. Hope can flare from the smallest detail, from a single turn in the rain, from watching a child do what he loves with all his heart. Daniel pushed open the car door. Cold mist struck his face, clearing his mind. He wrapped his coat around Lily, covered her head with a thin blanket, and wheeled her beneath the shelter. The boy in the rain faltered, movements slackening like a taut string suddenly released. He looked at them, his large brown eyes narrowing with wariness, feet shifting toward the courtyard's edge, the instinctive retreat of creatures trained by survival. Daniel raised a hand to reassure him, but before he could speak, Lily's voice broke out. "Don't go. Please, don't go. You dance so beautifully." Her "don't" made Daniel's eyes sting. In countless doctor visits, she had answered mostly with nods or shakes, like a doll conserving every ounce of energy. Yet now she was begging a stranger not to leave his reign. The boy looked at Lily, suspicion in his gaze slowly dissolving like sugar in hot water. "You like watching me dance?" His voice was hoarse from the cold, perhaps from hours of singing to imagined music. Lily nodded eagerly, wet hair plastered against her cheeks. Only then did Daniel notice the boy's bare feet, red and swollen with cold, toes blackened with dirt, yet still stretching straight after every landing. Someone had once taught him to love his feet, to use them to speak to the earth. Growing up wealthy, Daniel had been stuffed with countless definitions of class, from cutlery brands at dinners to suits in boardrooms. But what he saw now was the only thing worthy of the word, the grace of a movement forged by hardship and hunger. He asked his name. The boy answered softly, "Ethan." He asked where he lived. Ethan glanced toward a concrete doorway leading into an alley behind the hospital, where rainwater glistened like a silver snake. "Somewhere the rain doesn't fall too much." The words sounded like poetry, but pierced like a needle. Daniel wanted to ask more, but the boy's body stiffened again as he stepped closer. Ethan instantly retreated, recalling the street's unspoken rule. Every adult step nearer meant trouble inching closer. "Would you like to sit inside the lobby for a while?" "It's warmer there," Daniel asked gently, holding his distance. Ethan shook his head, raindrops trembling on his lashes. "I can't go in." "They'll call bad people." "I have to leave?" "What bad people?" Daniel blurted, regretting it immediately. The boy startled, body leaning toward escape, eyes flashing with the resolve of someone who had run too many times. Lily seized the moment. "Don't go. I want to see you dance again. This time I'll count with you." Whether it was the word count striking some secret chord of dance, or the pleading of a wheelchair-bound girl softening every defense, Ethan hesitated. He looked around, at the rain, at Lily's small hands raised like a conductor. Then he nodded, barely. He stepped back to the courtyard center, closed his eyes, inhaled. Daniel saw his chest expand under the wet shirt, and then he moved. No music, only rain as percussion, the shelter roof echoing droplets into rhythm. Ethan began with a chain of modified tendu, toes skimming the stone like pencils racing across paper. He shifted hips and leapt into a brief tour en l'air, landing in a deep plie, right arm opening as if sketching half a flower in the air. Lily counted, small but steady. 1, 2, 3, spin, stop, fly. Together, the two children co-created a song without notes, rain and heartbeat as conductors. Daniel understood why people paid to watch art, not to buy beauty, but to remind themselves their souls could still tremble. He suddenly remembered the first time he met Anna Carter years ago. During a street performance by the old bridge, she danced as though every step was an answer to the world's doubt. The thought flashed like lightning. He forced it down, afraid dwelling too long on the past would make him miss something imminent. The boy stopped, panting, biting his lip against shivers. Lily clapped, her hands breaking rhythm from the cold, yet it was the most beautiful applause of Daniel's life. He wanted to say thank you, invite the boy inside, promise shoes to protect his feet, too many things. But street children could smell promises from afar. Ethan edged back. "I have to go," he murmured, eyes skirting Daniel's gaze. seeking Lily's as if asking permission. She reached out as though to hold him, but only said, "You'll come back, won't you?" Ethan frowned like an adult weighing a contract, then gave the slightest nod, like a bird accustomed to fear. He turned to run, and at that very instant, as if a hand had nudged it, a small photograph slipped from his pocket, falling onto the stone. Rain streamed across its edges, spinning it like a rudderless paper boat. By instinct, Daniel bent to pick it up. His fingers brushed a flimsy print, corners frayed. In a heartbeat, he opened something never meant for him. A cheap camera snapshot. Its colors yellowed, yet sharp enough to seem freshly breathed alive. A younger boy, smaller than today's Ethan, stood beside a blonde woman whose blue eyes shone so bright, even the rain on the photo seemed lit. Her smile was something Daniel knew too well, as one recognizes their own signature. At the bottom, faint blue ink still marked a scrawl, both clumsy and graceful. "Ethan and Mom, Christmas 2021. The world, in a single beat, stopped breathing. Daniel heard rain as if it were his own heart pounding bone. A name surged, uncontrollable. Anna. It was Anna. Her blonde hair he had smoothed hundreds of times in memory. The eyes that had taught him the language of gentleness and freedom. The smile that once made him believe a heart was a room, with windows wide enough for sea winds to leave their salt. Anna, whose file had ended in a cold death certificate 10 years ago, now appeared in a photograph taken 2 years ago. Daniel felt a hand clench at his nape, stomach twisting, all the figures, meetings, and charts dissolving into meaningless dashes. If Anna had been alive at Christmas 2021, then why? He could not finish the question. Ethan had already vanished into the alley's darkness. Lily looked at him, her eyes asking everything children shouldn't need to ask. Why do adults lie? Why can a photo make a billionaire's hands tremble? Why can a poor boy's dance make someone want to kneel without knowing to what? Sometimes fate doesn't knock. It only taps with a raindrop falling into your palm. Daniel stared at the photo, at Lily, at the streaming gutters, and knew his world had just split onto a new branch, where every definition must be questioned. They say spectacular stories begin with thunder, with accidents, with a fateful email. But this one perhaps began with a tour en l'air in the rain and a photo slipping from a torn pocket. And if anyone were to ask him later what moment convinced him he must chase the truth to the end, Daniel would say it was when he heard his daughter count 1, 2, 3, fly in the rain, realizing she was no longer counting days until the next therapy session, but counting into a new life. At the edge of memory, Anna's voice whispered like breeze, "When I dance, I know I am alive." Daniel clenched the photo until its edges disintegrated, damp and cold, and inside him a quiet but stubborn resolve sprouted. He must find the boy named Ethan, uncover what happened to Anna, and explain why the eyes in that photo so uncannily mirrored Lily's. These questions were no longer the idle curiosity of a rich man. They were the responsibility of a father, of someone who had once loved and perhaps failed to save the woman he loved. Rain kept drumming on the shelter roof. An ambulance wailed in the distance. Daniel gently pushed Lily's wheelchair back beneath the lobby's warm lights. He bent down, wiped raindrops from her lashes, and whispered a promise to himself. "I'll find him. And if what I think is true, I'll find the part of life I lost." The rain in the hospital lobby that day seemed like nothing more than a strange moment, but to Daniel it felt like a door just cracked open, leading him into a vault of memories locked away for decades. When he returned home that evening, the entire Whitmore mansion on Pacific Heights was bathed in warm golden light. Yet to Daniel, everything suddenly felt empty. The expensive paintings on the walls were nothing but cold colors. The crystal vases glittering beneath the chandelier only reflected a man's solitude. He sat in silence in the study, holding the photograph that had been air-dried on the desk, his heart heavy. In the photo was Ethan, a few years younger than he was now, standing beside a blonde woman. Her eyes shone blue, her smile both gentle and proud. He could not mistake it. It was Anna Carter, the only woman who had ever made him consider leaving the Whitmore clan to live a simple life. But his family had not allowed that to happen, and Daniel, in the cowardice of youth, had let Anna walk away without holding on. He had once told himself it was the reasonable choice. Yet as he looked at the photo, all such reasoning turned to ash. In the darkness, Daniel heard Lily calling him from the next room. Her voice was weak, but contained an eagerness he hadn't heard in a long time. "Daddy, can I see him again tomorrow? The boy who danced in the rain?" The question choked Daniel. For the past 6 months, Lily had lived shut inside herself like a clam, refusing even the games she used to love. But after just a few minutes watching Ethan dance, the light had returned to his daughter's eyes. No doctor, no therapy had achieved that. Daniel wondered if it was that very dance, the rhythm of freedom that defied rain and hunger, that had touched the deepest part of Lily's soul. A reminder that the world still held beautiful things, even when legs could no longer walk. That night he did not sleep. A barrage of questions filled his head. Who was Ethan? Why did the boy move with such professional skill? And why was the photo tied to Anna, the woman he believed had left this world long ago? The next morning, Daniel took Lily to physiotherapy as usual. But unlike before, the girl did not seem bored. On the way, Lily talked non-stop about Ethan, about the way he spun, about how the rain became accompaniment to each step, about a feeling she called like being in a dream. Daniel drove and listened, a swirl of emotions rising within him, gratitude that Lily had found joy again, and torment that he himself could not give it to her. At the hospital, instead of going straight to therapy, Lily insisted on visiting the small garden where Ethan had danced the day before. Daniel couldn't refuse. He wheeled her out to the veranda. But the stone courtyard today held only drying puddles. There was no trace of the boy. Lily looked a little disappointed, but the light in her eyes hadn't gone out. Softly, she said, "Maybe he'll come back, right, Daddy? People who dance that beautifully surely can't disappear forever." Her words pricked Daniel's memory like a needle. Anna had once said something similar to him many years ago when they sat by the Boston shore. Those who truly love dance never disappear. They leave traces in the air, in other people's hearts, even when they're no longer present. Daniel began to feel a frightening coincidence. The photograph, the dance, the eyes so uncannily like Lily's, all of it evoked Anna. But Anna was gone. He had attended her funeral, seen her name on a gravestone. Then why? That evening, Daniel decided to search. He opened his computer, accessing the databases his company used to vet partners. But the results showed that Anna Carter had indeed been declared dead. Hospital records confirmed a car accident 10 years prior. Daniel leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Was the memory he faced merely fate's cruel joke? Or had someone staged a false death to conceal something larger? He remembered the last time he saw Anna. She stood in the rain, a thin coat clinging to her, blonde hair loose and tangled. "I can't compete with the name Whitmore, Daniel. I don't want to live my whole life under your family's contempt. If you love me, let me go," and he had let her go. From that day, his heart became a locked door. Besides Lily, no one could open it again. But now a single photograph had blown that door wide open. Daniel knew he could not sit still. He had to find that boy to uncover the truth about Anna. Not only for Lily, but for himself, to know whether he had lost a family he never even had the chance to build. That night, pushing open Lily's door, Daniel saw his daughter asleep, still wearing a dreamy smile. On the bedside table she had drawn with colored pencils, a boy dancing in the rain next to a girl in a wheelchair clapping. Daniel stood looking for a long time, then whispered, "I promise, Lily, I'll find him. And if fate allows, you won't only watch, you'll live inside an even more beautiful story." The door closed. Outside it was still raining, but inside Daniel, a flame had been kindled. The next morning, San Francisco welcomed a rare sunny day after a stretch of rain. But inside Daniel Whitmore, clouds remained. He couldn't shake the image of Ethan spinning in the rain and the photo that had shaken his heart. It felt like an invisible hand pressing against his chest, reminding him, "Don't think this was just a chance encounter. There's much more behind this boy." Daniel was a man of logic and evidence. He had built his career on data, algorithms, and business strategy. Yet in Ethan's case, instinct guided him more than reason. He had seen the boy's eyes glint with caution, the kind of look found only in children who've lived too long on the street, where every day is a survival test. At noon, instead of going to the office, Daniel drove back to the children's hospital. He went straight to the stone courtyard where the boy had danced the night before. No Ethan, only mottled dry watermarks and a damp smell in the breeze. A passing nurse shook her head when asked, "We don't allow vagrant kids in here." Probably a homeless child. Sometimes they come for food. The words "homeless child" rang in Daniel's head like a bell. He had read hundreds of reports on the rate of homeless minors in America, but when that number suddenly had a face, eyes, and steps beautiful enough to rekindle his daughter's spirit, all statistics turned into a real knife wound. That afternoon, Daniel wheeled Lily around the neighborhood near the hospital, hoping to catch sight of Ethan. They turned into the alley behind a grocery store where the smell of garbage mingled with stale bread. There he glimpsed a small figure squatting, rummaging through a dumpster for discarded milk cartons. It was Ethan. He still wore the dark t-shirt, now smudged with more stains, hair tousled. Daniel stepped forward and the boy shot upright, eyes wide with the fear of a cornered animal. I'm not doing anything bad. I'm just looking for something to eat," Ethan stammered. Lily spoke immediately, pleading, "Ethan, don't run, it's me, Lily!" The boy looked at her, his face softened for an instant, but his body stayed taut as a drawn string. Daniel spoke slowly. "You don't have to be afraid. Lily's dad only wants to make sure you're okay." He chose to call himself Lily's dad instead of "I'm Daniel Whitmore," because he knew that for a street child, wealthy names only bred distance and suspicion. "Where do you live, Ethan?" Daniel asked, voice gentle as wind. The boy was silent for a few seconds, then released a sentence that thickened the air. "I live somewhere the rain doesn't fall too much." The answer was a knife beautiful and painful. An 8-year-old child, instead of saying, "I live at such and such address," defined his shelter by avoiding rain. That wasn't a home, only a makeshift place. Daniel looked at the tiny hands, calloused and bruised, clearly accustomed to days of scavenging for food. And yet, strangely, the feet still held a dancer's agility. Those very feet had spun and leapt, igniting Lily's heart once more. Lily spoke up, blue eyes shining. "Ethan, you danced so beautifully yesterday. Could you dance for me one more time?" Daniel recognized that her tone wasn't just a request, it was a plea. In 6 months, he had never heard Lily beg anyone like that. Ethan looked flustered. His eyes darted around at the trash bins, the dark alley, then at Daniel in his crisp suit. Does she really want to watch? I really do, Lily answered firmly. And then, right there in the damp alleyway, Ethan began to dance again. Without rain for music this time, only the grocery store's fan and distant traffic. Yet every movement remained decisive, with a freedom nothing could bind. Spins, small leaps, hands sketching the air like a quick study. Daniel realized the boy wasn't dancing for entertainment. He was dancing to survive, to declare that amid harshness, something of his own could not be taken. When Ethan stopped, gasping, Lily clapped, cheeks flushed. See, Daddy? I told you he dances like in a dream. Daniel nodded, a swell of tenderness and sorrow rising within him. This boy, who had no roof over his head, could give Lily what he, with all his money, could not: hope. He reached into his pocket to pull out some money, then stopped. For Ethan, cash might not be what he needed most. He needed trust, a hand extended without conditions. Daniel understood that a single misstep would send the boy vanishing into that alley, and he might never see him again. Ethan, Daniel said softly, would you like to come with us to the hospital and have something warm to eat? Not in the lobby, just the cafe across the street. The boy looked at him, eyes half suspicion, half hunger. His empty stomach was surely protesting. But after a few seconds, Ethan shook his head, voice trembling. If I go, they'll call the police. They'll take me to a bad place. There, kids get locked up. I'm scared, Daniel started. The bad place was surely some overcrowded shelter. The boy was only 8, yet already knew what it felt like to be a number in a cold welfare system. Before Daniel could say more, Ethan suddenly yanked up his shirt, clutched his ragged backpack, and bolted into the dark alley, leaving Daniel and Lily stunned. The small footsteps echoed, then vanished. Daniel sighed, but Lily's gaze still shone, following the boy's disappeared silhouette. I know he'll come back, she whispered, as if trusting in fate. Daniel bent down, looked at his daughter, then into the deep alleyway. A clear command rose within him. He had to find Ethan before it was too late. That afternoon, San Francisco's sky sank under heavy clouds again. Daniel pushed Lily's wheelchair along the hospital's glass corridor, Ethan's fleeing figure still haunting him. With each soft grind of the wheels on tile, his chest tightened. He had signed contracts worth hundreds of millions, commanded thousands of employees, yet before a homeless boy, he felt utterly powerless. As they passed the stone courtyard, a large rain puddle still lingered from the night before. In the murky water, Daniel spotted something glinting. He stopped, bent down, and picked it up. A small photograph, edges frayed and water blurred. Daniel gently unfolded it, as carefully as if touching an overly fragile secret. And then his heart seemed to stop. In the picture, a younger boy stood beside a blonde woman. Her blue eyes sparkled, her smile both tender and strong. Daniel's heart clenched. It was Anna Carter, the woman he had loved fiercely, the one his family had forced him to abandon, the one whose funeral he had attended 10 years ago, standing in the rain, watching the casket lowered. Beneath the photo, the blue ink inscription had smudged, Ethan and Mom, Christmas 2021. Daniel trembled, cold sweat running down his nape. If the photo was taken in 2021, then Anna had been alive at least until 2 years ago. Then what was that funeral 10 years back? A mistake or a staging? Who had orchestrated her death and why? Lily looked up at her father, startled by his expression. Daddy, why are you staring at that photo so long? Who's in it? Her voice pulled him back to the present. He couldn't reveal all the chaos inside. He only answered softly, "Someone from my past. Someone very important." He remembered his early days with Anna. She was an amateur dancer who performed at street shows. Daniel, freshly graduated then, had fallen in love not only with the dancing, but with the person. They had dreamed of a small apartment, evenings filled with music and laughter. But the Whitmore family saw Anna as a stain, someone unfit for a highborn clan. The pressure weighed down, and Daniel, in the cowardice of youth, failed to protect their love. When Anna left, he let her go. Much later, news of her death in a car accident crushed him. He went to the funeral but stood far back, unable to face it. He had believed it was the period at the end of the only love that had ever made him consider giving up everything. And he lived the next 10 years under that belief. Yet this photograph tore everything apart. If Anna had lived until 2021, then the child in the picture, Ethan, was her son. A thought flashed that turned Daniel cold. If Anna was Ethan's mother, then the boy might be his biological son. His hands shook so badly that Lily had to touch him, her small voice asking, "Daddy, why are you trembling?" Daniel squeezed her hand and shook his head. "It's okay, Lily. It's just, I've found an important piece of the puzzle." A torrent of questions surged. Where had Anna been all these years? Why had she disappeared from his life? Who had staged that false death? And why was Ethan living on the street instead of a safe home? Daniel realized that the truth was no longer a choice, but a duty. Not only because of his memories of Anna, but because of Lily. His daughter had found light in her eyes through Ethan. If Ethan was truly part of his past, then both Lily and the boy were bound to his future. That night, Daniel sat alone in the study, the photograph laid carefully before him. He pulled out an old file which still held letters Anna had sent many years ago, words scented with old paper yet heavy as ever. "When I dance, I feel alive," Anna had written. And now a boy named Ethan was dancing in the rain as if to prove it. Daniel looked out the window at San Francisco's lights, blurred in the fog. He whispered a promise, not sure whether to Anna, to Ethan, or to himself. "No matter how painful the truth is, I will find it." And from that moment, the true journey began. That night, as San Francisco curled under layers of salt fog rolling in from the bay, Daniel sat motionless in his study. The luxurious room with walnut shelves and dim amber lamps no longer radiated power as it once had. On the desk lay the dried photograph, a small scrap of paper weighing on his chest like a stone. Each time his eyes met the smile in the photo, the past surged like a storm, toppling all the cold logic he had built over the years. He remembered the first time Anna appeared in his life, not in private boardrooms or glittering high society parties the Whitmore clan measured themselves by. They had met at an outdoor performance near the Boston Pier. Anna stood in the circle of spectators, golden hair tousled in the sea breeze, blue eyes burning with defiance as she spun through a street flamenco. Daniel had been young then, fresh out of university, newly dragged into the family empire. Amid neon lights and pounding electronic music, he saw only Anna. Each step she danced felt like a declaration. "I exist, I am free, I need no one's permission." And Daniel's heart, raised under rigid rules, for the first time knew what it was to want to break them. But from the start, their love was a losing battle. The Whitmores would never accept a street dancer as their daughter-in-law. To them, Anna was just a fling, a threat to stain the family name. Daniel had argued countless times with his father, had stormed out of board meetings to run to makeshift stages where Anna performed, had sworn he would give it all up to be with her. But those vows splintered beneath family pressure. He remembered that final night with painful clarity. It rained as it did now. Anna stood in front of their small rented apartment, a battered suitcase beside her. She spoke with steady voice, though her eyes were wet. "Daniel, I can't keep living as a shadow in your house. Every glance from your mother, every jab from your friends cuts me. If you love me, let me go. I want to be myself, not a shadow in your world." Daniel had been silent. He hadn't fought. He hadn't had the courage to stand against his family, and he had let her walk away. When the door closed, half his heart closed with it. Years later, the news of Anna's death in a car accident reached him. He still remembered standing at her funeral, far from the crowd, coat soaked by rain, like a fugitive. He hadn't dared come closer, hadn't dared look at the face of the woman he had once sworn to protect. Only the church bell rang long in the rain, asking him silently, "How long will you remain a coward?" He believed her death was real, believed Anna had left the world. He had comforted himself with excuses. At least she's freed from this cruel life. But the photo slipping from Ethan's pocket tore apart every excuse. Christmas 2021. Anna had still been alive. Then what was that funeral? A staged play to deceive him? A mistake so cruel? Or had someone deliberately buried the truth? Anger stirred within him, anger at himself for not searching, anger at his family for forcing separation, anger at a society too quick to erase someone just because she didn't belong to the right class. He looked at Lily, sleeping in the next room, her eyes still carrying joy after watching Ethan dance. A thought squeezed his chest. If Ethan was Anna's son, could he also be his son? It all aligned, the dark hair, the wary yet warm eyes, the passion for dance just like Anna's. Ethan could very well carry Whitmore blood. If that was true, then the boy had been surviving on the streets, scavenging from trash, while his father Daniel sat atop a throne of power, ignorant of his child's existence. Daniel felt ashamed enough to want to smash the glass walls of this house. For what did wealth mean if he couldn't fulfill even the most basic duty of a father? That night, he took out liquor, but didn't drink. He only stared at the photo, recalling every tiny detail of Anna. Her raspy laugh after hours of practice, the way she let her hair down to dry in the sea breeze, her words, "Daniel, I don't need you to buy me the world. I just need you beside me when I dance." He had thought those fragments of memory dead, yet now they flooded back vivid enough to blur his eyes. Daniel wondered if life was giving him a chance to make amends. That meeting with Ethan wasn't coincidence, it was destiny. If he let it pass, he would lose everything, not just a son he had never known, but the only hope helping Lily fight against her wheelchair. He rose, stepping out to the balcony. The city below glittered like a sea of artificial stars, but for Daniel, the only light that mattered was the spark in his daughter's eyes when she watched Ethan dance. To preserve that light, he had to uncover the truth about Anna, the false death, and Ethan's true origins. In that moment, Daniel no longer felt like a cold businessman, but a man about to embark on the hardest journey of his life, not conquering markets, but facing the past and reclaiming a lost family. He whispered into the night as though sending it to Anna somewhere beyond, "I stayed silent once. This time I won't let you disappear, even if I must face the entire world." And from that night on, Daniel Whitmore, the millionaire the press called cold and ruthless, began a transformation into another kind of man. Dawn brought a cold gray over the city. Daniel had been awake all night, eyes sunken, yet mind sharper than ever. The photograph before him was a challenge. Stop running. Face the truth. For years, his strength had been in reading reports, analyzing data, predicting markets. But now, what he needed wasn't data. It was memory, buried, twisted, or erased. He began at the hospital. Daniel remembered Anna once suffered mild memory lapses and had been hospitalized before they parted. He sought out an old doctor he recalled still working there, Dr. Harold Klein. The consultation room hadn't changed old shelves, the mixed scent of disinfectant and bitter coffee. When Daniel mentioned Anna, Dr. Klein flinched, then quietly set down his cup. "You still remember her, Daniel?" the old man asked, his gaze filled with something like pity. Daniel nearly roared, "Don't tell me she died 10 years ago when this photo proves she lived until 2021. He slapped the photo on the desk, voice shaking. Dr. Klein sighed, stroking his chin. "I suspected this day would come." Then he spoke slowly, each word slicing Daniel's heart. After leaving Daniel, Anna had truly struggled. She lived quietly, taking odd jobs to survive. She was hospitalized, often for temporary memory loss, sometimes remembering, sometimes forgetting. One day, hospital records listed her as no legal papers, no next of kin. She had become a shadow in the system. Daniel felt his blood freeze. He was her closest kin, the one who should have been there. Yet she was recorded as no one. A cold punctuation in a file had erased Anna into invisibility. And where had he been? In leather-walled boardrooms, at glittering parties, in a world that hailed him as a success symbol. That success was built on absence, on betraying the woman he once promised to protect. "When she passed a few years ago, I had no authority to contact you," Dr. Klein continued. "No one claimed guardianship. Only the boy, Ethan. He was 6 then. He sat by his mother's bed for hours, not crying, just holding her hand, whispering, 'I'll keep dancing for you, so you'll never forget me.' And then he vanished from the system. We had no documents, no way to keep him. He slipped onto the streets like thousands of other children. Daniel could no longer sit. He sprang up, heart hammering. The image of Ethan in the rain flooded back bare feet spinning on wet stone, eyes both proud and fragile. The boy hadn't danced for fun. He danced to keep his last promise to his mother. Sorrow surged, choking him. In his soul, doubt evaporated. Ethan was his flesh and blood. No DNA test was needed. Just the eyes, the movements, the way he clutched his torn backpack as though it were the world. He was Anna's reflection. And if Anna had been part of Daniel, then Ethan was the piece of Daniel's heart he had lost. He left the hospital, driving through cracked asphalt streets. Traffic lights flickered, ignored. Only one command pulsed in his mind: find Ethan. Now. That night he drove through alleys, asking the homeless late-night shopkeepers, newsboys. A frail woman under a bridge said she'd seen a boy who danced in the rain, begging for bread. A supermarket guard said he'd chased the boy away for disturbing customers. Each clue stabbed Daniel deeper pain that his son lived like this, anger that he hadn't been there. By dawn, he returned to the mansion exhausted. Opening Lily's door, he found her dreaming, lips murmuring, 1, 2, 3, spin. "Ethan, don't go." Even in dreams, she called his name. Daniel realized that if he failed to find Ethan, he would lose not only a son, but Lily's last hope for courage. In that moment, Daniel saw there was no turning back. Even if it meant clashing with the Whitmores, unearthing rotten secrets, confronting truths he had long fled, he would do it. For Ethan, for Lily, for Anna. He whispered into the dark, voice breaking like an oath. "Anna, I stayed silent once, but not this time. I will find our son. I will bring him home, The Seattle sky that night seemed to conspire with his torment. Dark clouds massed, winds whipped through streets, rain pounding as though to erase all traces. But for Daniel, rain was no longer a veil. It was the stage where he believed he would find Ethan, the boy who always danced in the rain, as if water was the only stage he owned. He put on a long coat, leaving chauffeur and bodyguards far behind. This was not the errand of a powerful millionaire chasing someone beneath him. This was a father searching for the son he had lost. Daniel wandered through night markets shutting down, past stoops piled with cardboard, past the curled silhouettes of the homeless beneath torn blankets. He bent low, offering a few bills and the enlarged photo of Ethan. "Have you seen this boy? He often dances, in the rain." A bearded man, eyes red from liquor, gave a slow nod. "That kid with eyes shining like street lamps?" "Yeah, I've seen him near the abandoned train station. Dances for coins, but bolts the moment anyone comes close." Daniel clenched his fists. He didn't care how much money slipped into vagabond hands. Any lead was enough to quicken his steps through the downpour. The derelict station loomed cold. A single flickering bulb threw yellow over puddled tiles. And in the center, Daniel saw a figure he knew. Ethan, bare feet pounding wet stone, spinning, leaping, arms carving invisible melodies. No music but rain as orchestra. Each trembling step still held an uncanny belief. Daniel froze. He wanted to run forward, to embrace the boy, yet feared breaking the fragile scene. He called softly, voice cracking, "Ethan." The child halted, spun around. Wide brown eyes glinted with suspicion. "You followed me?" His voice trembled, shoulders tensed to flee. Daniel lifted both hands, palms bare, calluses showing. "No, I only wanted to see you." The word slipped out before he could stop it. "Son." Both of them stilled at the sound. Ethan blinked, stammered, "Don't call me that. I don't have a dad." Grown-ups only lie. "Mom said you'd never come." Daniel's heart clenched. He stepped forward carefully, voice hoarse. "Your mom, Anna, she never stopped loving you. And I never knew you existed. If I had known, I would have searched the ends of the earth." From inside his coat, he drew a crumpled letter, the last Anna had left in hospital files, handwriting shaky but warm. He held it out. "Do you recognize her script? These are her final words. For both of us, Ethan didn't reach for it." He stared, torn between yearning and fear. "If it's true, if you're my dad, why are you only here now? Why did I sleep in the rain, dance for food, while you lived in a mansion?" Each question pierced like knives. Daniel didn't evade. He dropped to his knees on the wet floor, rain lashing his shoulders. "Because I failed. I let prejudice and family power blind me. I wasn't there for your mother, and I paid by losing both of you. But now I won't hide. I'm begging you, give me a chance to make it right." Ethan stood still, lips trembling. Rain and tears mingled, breaking his young face into fragments. He whispered, "Mom said, one day, if I danced long enough, the one who was meant to find me would see. I didn't believe. But you came." Daniel opened his arms, waiting. The moment stretched endless. Then, like a weary bird, Ethan rushed into his embrace. A trembling hug, so tight Daniel felt each tiny heartbeat hammer against his chest. The boy sobbed, words breaking. "Dad, don't leave me. Don't ever leave me again." In the roar of rain, Daniel held his son tight, whispering like an oath, "I'll never let go again. You are family, my flesh and blood. I promise." From a shadowed distance, a black car sat idle. Inside, a man raised a phone, voice low. "Target has made contact." We must act quickly before this spirals out of control. Morning broke over Seattle, bright yet cold after the storm. Pale sunlight slipped through the wide glass panes of the Whitmore mansion, casting both gentleness and glare on the wooden floors. To Daniel, that light carried no peace. He sat in the dining room, hands around a cup of long, cold coffee, eyes drawn toward the window where Lily and Ethan sat together in the garden. The boy arranged pebbles into a butterfly shape while Lily giggled, adding wings with yellow leaves. The scene was beautiful enough to ache, like a missing family portrait finally restored. Daniel knew he had found the most precious thing in life. A son he had never known, and a new hope for Lily after months of darkness in her wheelchair. Yet the joy felt fragile as morning mist. A shadow still loomed over them, as though any moment a hand from the past could crush the light newly rekindled. The crunch of car tires on gravel cut the quiet. A silver Rolls-Royce stopped at the front steps. Out stepped Margaret Whitmore, Daniel's mother. Even past 70, she carried regal poise, steel gray eyes under carefully styled silver hair. She entered without knocking, as if the mansion still belonged wholly to the Whitmore clan, and Daniel was but a dutiful son. Her gaze landed on Ethan at once. It wasn't curiosity nor affection, but judgment. So this is the reason my son neglects business, disrupts the family, and drags the Whitmore name into gossip? Her voice was sharp as blades. Daniel rose, steady. Mother, this is Ethan, the son of Anna Carter. He emphasized Anna's name, a defiance against any attempt to erase her. For a heartbeat, Margaret's face faltered. Then she smoothed it cold. Anna Carter. That name was erased from the Whitmore line 10 years ago. Your father and I ensured she had no way back. And now she leaves this. Her eyes flicked to Ethan, so chilling the boy shrank behind Daniel. Lily suddenly wheeled forward, voice trembling but firm. He's not this. Ethan is my friend. And my brother. At that moment, Daniel saw two worlds collide. On one side, the family legacy of power and coldness. On the other, the unconditional innocence of children. He knew if he didn't stand now, he would repeat the mistake of years past, when he let others steal love from his life. Drawing a deep breath, Daniel faced his mother. You once took Anna from me. But with Ethan, I will not allow it. Call me a traitor, say I disgrace the Whitmore name. Ethan is my blood. I will protect him even against all of you. The living room sank into thick silence. Margaret stared at her son for a long time. Her hand trembled faintly, quickly hidden in her dress folds. She turned away, leaving only a frigid warning. You have no idea what you're bringing upon yourself. The confrontation with Margaret left the mansion colder than the storm outside. For days afterward, Daniel felt the Whitmore empire tightening like a noose. Partners began to delay calls. Share prices wavered under sudden rumors of instability and leadership. And behind those whispers, Daniel smelled only one hand: his own family, moving to silence him as they had silenced Anna years ago. But this time, Daniel wasn't alone. He had Lily's fragile hope and Ethan's trembling but resilient trust. Every morning he watched them together, Lily tracing chess pieces on a board she couldn't reach with her legs, Ethan teaching her to count beets with pebbles in the garden. Those small moments convinced him of a truth no boardroom could erase. Family is not measured by wealth, but by presence. One evening, as rain swept over the Pacific Heights mansion, a manila envelope was slipped under the door. Inside was a subpoena summoning Daniel Whitmore to a closed family court hearing. The charge, endangering a minor and attempting unlawful custody of a child, without guardianship papers. Daniel's blood chilled. This wasn't just business warfare. His own family was trying to rip Ethan away by painting him as an intruder who had abducted a homeless boy. He slammed the file on his desk, rage boiling. They want to erase him. Just like they erased Anna. Ethan, hearing the raised voice, appeared at the door. "Are they taking me away?" His voice was small but steady. Daniel knelt, grasping his shoulders. "No one will take you, Ethan. Not while I breathe." The courtroom, days later, was an icy theater. High arched ceilings, polished mahogany benches, the Whitmore crest gleaming above the judge's seat. Rows of lawyers in dark suits sat poised, their faces as sharp as blades. At the far table, Margaret Whitmore herself sat, immaculate in pearl gray silk, lips pursed as though she already owned the verdict. Daniel entered with Ethan at his side, Lily in her wheelchair just behind. The murmur of the crowd swelled. To them it looked absurd, a billionaire CEO reduced to defending a street child in a family court. But to Daniel this was not absurd. This was the truest battle of his life. The opposing attorney rose first, voice smooth as oil. "Your Honor, the defendant seeks to assume custody of a boy with no documented ties to him. Mr. Whitmore has no proof of paternity, no legal claim. This child was found wandering the streets, clearly unsafe. Our client, Mrs. Margaret Whitmore, requests immediate transfer of guardianship to the Family Foundation, where proper facilities exist. We ask the court to protect both the child and the Whitmore name." Murmurs rippled like waves. For a moment, Daniel felt the weight of every eye pressing him down. Then he rose. His voice carried not the polish of lawyers, but the raw steel of a man who had finally chosen to stand. "Your Honor, I will not deny that I failed. I failed Anna Carter when I let family pressure tear us apart. I failed Ethan by not knowing of his existence until weeks ago. But failure yesterday does not strip me of my duty today. This boy—" Daniel's voice broke. He turned toward Ethan, who sat stiffly, small fists clenched. "This boy is my son. I don't need a DNA test to know. I see it every time he spins in the rain, the way his mother once did. I see it in the eyes that mirror my daughter's. I see it in the courage he carries, surviving on streets no child should endure." He stepped forward, ignoring his lawyer's frantic gesture. "Your Honor, the Whitmore name does not need protection. It needs redemption. If you want evidence, look not at documents forged in boardrooms, but at the boy himself. Ask him if he feels safer in the arms of a grandmother who calls him this, or with a father who will kneel in the rain and beg for another chance." The courtroom fell silent. For the first time, Ethan lifted his face. His voice quivered but rang clear. "Your Honor, I want to stay with him, with my dad. He came for me. No one else ever did." Lily rolled forward, small hands trembling on her wheelchair wheels. "And I want him too. Ethan isn't just my brother. He's the only reason I believe I can smile again. Please don't take him away." The judge adjusted his glasses, gaze heavy. He turned toward Margaret, who sat rigid, lips pressed so tight the color drained from them. "This court does not exist to preserve reputations," the judge intoned. "It exists to serve justice and protect children. In light of testimony, and given the boy's expressed will, custody is hereby granted to Mr. Daniel Whitmore." The gavel struck. The sound echoed like thunder across Daniel's chest. He closed his eyes, relief streaming down his face like rain. Ethan leaned into him, whispering, "Dad, we won." But Daniel knew it wasn't victory. It was only the beginning. Because Margaret's eyes, cold and sharp even in defeat, promised a war far larger than any courtroom. The news broke like lightning across the city. Billionaire CEO defies his own family in court. Whitmore heir recognizes homeless boy as son. Scandal or redemption? Daniel Whitmore risks empire for child. Headlines screamed from every newsstand. Screens on skyscrapers looped the moment Ethan clutched Daniel's hand in court. Lily beside them, her wheelchair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The world, which once only saw Daniel Whitmore as a ruthless tycoon, now stared at him as something else. A father, trembling, human. But inside the Whitmore empire, the storm was merciless. Stock dipped. Board members panicked. Whispers of replacing Daniel as CEO spread like wildfire. Behind those whispers was the same hand that had orchestrated Anna's disappearance years ago. Margaret Whitmore was not defeated. She was only retreating to strike harder. Daniel sat in his office at the top of Whitmore Tower. The city stretched beneath like a chessboard of lights. Across from him, Ethan and Lily bent over a drawing pad. Ethan sketched clumsy stick figures, one tall, one in a wheelchair, one smaller with arms outstretched. Above them a shaky word, family. Lily colored the sky blue, adding yellow stars. Daniel's throat tightened. For years, his desk had been covered with profit charts, contracts, glossy reports. Now the most valuable paper in front of him was this child's drawing. His assistant, Martin, stepped in quietly. "Sir, the board wants you to release a statement. They say silence is costing us billions." Daniel turned, eyes steady. "Draft one line. Just one. No fortune is worth more than family. Ethan is my son." Martin hesitated. "That will send shockwaves. It could cost you the chairmanship." Daniel looked back at the children. "Then let it. If I lose the empire to keep them, it will be the first wise trade I've ever made." The press conference the next morning packed every seat. Cameras bristled like rifles, ready to fire. Daniel stood at the podium, Ethan's small hand in his, Lily beside him. Flashes blinded. "I built a company worth billions," he began, voice even, "but wealth blinded me to what truly mattered. I let love slip away. I let prejudice silence me. And because of that, I lost years I can never reclaim. Today, I stand here not as a CEO, but as a father. This boy is my son. The world may measure me by profit and failure, but I will measure myself by whether he and my daughter can grow up knowing they are loved." The hall fell utterly still. Even the most hardened reporters lowered their lenses for a breath. Then came the questions. "Mr. Whitmore, are you admitting this boy is illegitimate?" Daniel met the eyes coldly. "No child is illegitimate. Only parents can be. Will this affect Whitmore Tech's future?" He smiled faintly. "If protecting my children shakes our empire, then perhaps our empire was built on sand." The coverage was explosive. Some called him reckless. Others called him brave. Hashtag spread, hashtag father first, hashtag Whitmore truth. Strangers on the street pressed notes into Ethan's hands. "Keep dancing." Mothers wrote letters to Lily. "You gave us hope." But not all voices were kind. Darker headlines emerged. Mystery around Anna Carter's death. What did Daniel know? Photos resurfaced of Anna's last days, blurry, grainy, whispered over with speculation. Rumors twisted. Was her death an accident or cover-up? Why had no death certificate surfaced in public records? Daniel read them in silence, rage simmering. He knew who fed these rumors, Margaret, tightening her claws. She had buried Anna once. Now she would bury her again unless Daniel uncovered the truth first. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Daniel found Ethan sitting by the window, watching the rain begin again. The boy's bare feet swung above the floor, restless. "You're not scared of storms?" Daniel asked gently. Ethan shook his head. "Mom said rain was God's applause. Every time I danced, she told me the sky was clapping." His voice softened. "She used to hum when she tucked me in." "I can't remember the tune anymore. I try, but it's fading." Daniel's chest constricted. He took the boy's hand. "We'll find it again." Her voice, her truth, everything they tried to hide. "I promise." Ethan looked up, eyes glistening. "Do you really mean it? You won't disappear like before?" Daniel pulled him close. "Never again. They stole too much from us already. It ends now." Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating Whitmore Tower. Inside, father and son sat side by side, shadows stretching across the room like two halves finally joined. But in the shadows below, another figure watched from a passing car. A phone call crackled in the dark. Phase 2 begins. If he digs further into Anna's past, we'll all burn. Stop him, whatever it takes. The following week unfolded like a blade drawn in silence. Daniel no longer trusted the gilded offices of Whitmore Tower. Too many eyes, too many leaks. He began his search in places where power never reached, basements of hospitals, records buried under dust, witnesses long forgotten. His first stop was St. Gabriel Children's Hospital, the very place where Ethan had danced in the rain. He requested access to old patient records under Anna Carter's name. The clerk, a weary man in his 60s, frowned at the screen. "Sir, the file is flagged sealed by court order 10 years ago." Daniel's jaw clenched. "On whose authority?" The man hesitated, lowering his voice. "Whitmore Foundation. Your father's signature." It felt like a fist twisting in his gut. William Whitmore had not only erased Anna from his son's life, but from official existence itself. Daniel demanded copies. The man slid an envelope across the counter, whispering, "I shouldn't, but she was kind. I remember her. She brought the nurses chocolates even when she had nothing. Someone like her shouldn't just vanish." Inside the envelope were fragments, intake forms, notes scrawled by doctors. Words leapt out like bullets. Memory lapses. No known kin suffers from trauma. And then the one that shattered him. Pregnant, approximately. 6 months. The date was 8 years earlier. The timeline matched Ethan's birth. Daniel's vision swam. He leaned against the cold marble wall of the records office, breathing hard. His son had been marked down as unclaimed child even before he was born. That night, Daniel visited Harold Klein, the elderly physician who had once treated Anna. The old man's study smelled of antiseptic and coffee. His hands shook as he lit a pipe. "You should have come sooner, Daniel," Klein murmured. "Your father paid handsomely to keep her hidden. They said she was unstable, a threat to the family's reputation. But she wasn't. She was broken, yes, but not beyond hope. She loved you, even when she couldn't remember your name." Daniel's throat closed. "And Ethan?" Klein sighed. "He stayed by her bed. He refused to leave. Even when the state came, he clung to her. When she passed, they tried to place him in foster care. He ran. He's been running ever since." Daniel lowered his head into his hands. 10 years of boardrooms and quarterly reports while his own blood had slept in alleys, clutching memories like weapons. When he returned home, Ethan was asleep on the couch, arms wrapped around his tattered backpack. Daniel gently unzipped it. Inside, folded like a relic, was the photograph, Anna's eyes blazing through time. Beneath it, he found a crumpled envelope. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside lay a letter, written in Anna's hand, faded but legible. "Daniel, if you ever find this, know that I never stopped dancing, not even when the world tried to make me disappear. Our son is my last dance. Protect him. Don't let them bury him like they buried me." The ink blurred where water had stained the paper. Perhaps rain, perhaps tears. Daniel pressed the letter to his chest. "I found him, Anna. I won't fail again." But even as he vowed it, danger tightened around them. 2 nights later, as Daniel walked Lily and Ethan out of a therapy session, a black SUV screeched to a stop at the curb. Doors flew open. Men in dark suits stepped out, masks hiding their faces. Ethan froze, eyes wide with the same feral instinct Daniel had seen before. Lily screamed, "Get behind me!" Daniel barked, shoving the wheelchair back. The tallest man reached forward, voice cold. "The boy comes with us." Orders from above. Daniel knew exactly what that meant. His family, his own bloodline. Adrenaline surged. For the first time in years, Daniel wasn't a CEO. He was a father cornered. He grabbed a steel umbrella from a rack and swung it with the force of fury long buried. Metal cracked against bone. One attacker fell. Another lunged, but Ethan, instinct sharp, hurled his backpack into the man's legs, buying seconds. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had hit an alarm. The attackers retreated, shoving Daniel aside. The SUV peeled away into the night. In the echoing silence, Daniel dropped to his knees, pulling both children close. His chest heaved. Rage and terror mingled in his veins. He whispered into Ethan's damp hair, "They will never take you." Not while I breathe, but deep down he knew the war for Ethan had only just begun.